We are to heap burning coals upon their head. Now, I did a little research into this because we've all heard this verse. We've heard it thrown out there, but a lot of us don't understand the context. There are a lot of different contexts out there, but the one that really clicked for me was one that dealt with jewelry, and particularly goldsmithing. That if you want to make a fire hotter, and we all know this, whether it's a forge or a metalsmith's station or whether it's a campfire out if you want a campfire to get hot, what do you do to make it hot? Put more stuff on it, right? Build it up, right? It gets hotter and hotter from inside and builds and builds and builds. Well, goldsmiths used to do this. They'd have a chunk of gold and they'd want to mold it into something. And it's kind of hard to manipulate gold, even though it's a soft metal. It's hard to manipulate it when it's cold. So they'd heap up the coals, they'd put it on there, and they wouldn't melt it, but they'd soften it. And they'd make it more pliable and more bendable and more flexible and turn it into something much more intricate and exact and beautiful than that lump of gold that was there before. But if they had a cheap piece of gold that had a lot of imperfections and so forth on it, they would heap up the coals even higher to the point where it finally melted, and then when the impurities rose up the top, they'd skim off the scum. Then they'd let it cool, then they would start to mold it, now that they could work with it. And we see two verses, one Old Testament, one New Testament, that talk about this in two slightly different ways. Proverbs 25, verses 21 and 22 says, "If your enemy is hungry, give them food to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. In doing this, you will put heaping coals upon his head, and the Lord will reward you." Think of it like the goldsmith. You can either put some coals on their head and soften them, or you can keep heaping coals. And by they mean that, giving them grace, love, peace, long-suffering that they don't deserve, that they haven't asked for, they haven't given to you. They've been unlovable and you love them. They've been impatient with you and you're patient. They've shown you no grace and you fill them with grace. Build up more and more coals, and eventually that gold will melt, the impurities will rise to the top, you can get the scum out of that person's life, just like you can the gold. In Romans 12, verses 20 through 21, on the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed them. If he's thirsty, give them something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on their head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And keep that verse in there for that last verse, 21. Do not be overcome with their evil. Instead, overcome their evil with your good.